Mad as hell. That's how Pam Gaskin, who's been voting in Texas for 46 years, described her frustration trying to navigate new requirements to apply for a mail-in ballot under Texas Republicans' new voter suppression law.
There are going to be thousands of Texans who will be disenfranchised. And, you know, we've seen this before in Texas. In 2014, when they passed the voter ID law, they didn't implement it well. There was no massive effort to educate voters about the changes that they'd made. And then Wendy Davis, who was running for governor at the time, had a hard time voting. Even a former Speaker of the Texas House, Jim Wright, couldn't vote because he had an expired license. And so people who were prominent were affected by that in that election.
Lawrence, this is Jim Crow 2.0. I saw my parents pay poll tax. I saw them pay poll tax for themselves, and I saw my dad pay poll tax for other citizens up and down the street just to facilitate voting. I've been there, I know what they're doing, and they're trying to take us back, but we're not going back. We're not going back.
Republican efforts to suppress voting in Texas are paying off, and even if you're not a Texan, you should be concerned about all this. I'm Yasmin Khan for Rebel HQ, and the Texas Tribune recently reported that Texas's largest county, Harris County, stated that it has, quote, identified approximately 10,000 mail-in ballots, 6,000 Democratic and 4,000 Republican, that were not added into the original election night count. Now, Harris County is basically Houston. Houston is the fourth largest city in the United States and the largest city in Texas. Harris County is also my county, so I'll admit that this story is a little bit personal for me. But even if you're not from Texas, again, you should still be concerned with all of the tactics Republicans have implemented here in blatant efforts to suppress voters, or at the very least, to discourage them from even attempting to vote.
This personification of Jim Crow is actively doing everything he can to keep the path to the ballot box as narrow and as white as possible.
It is the first election cycle under Texas's controversial new voting law, which bans drive-through and 24-hour voting and makes it a felony for election officials to send mail-in ballot applications to voters who haven't requested them, but also expands early voting hours. Republicans say it makes the state's elections more secure. Democrats, voting rights activists say it makes it more difficult for minority voters to cast their ballots.
You should be concerned because if it can happen here, it can happen in your very own red state. How exciting for you. And many are already looking for ways to emulate what the Texas GOP has managed to pull off. First, let's start off with the fact that Republicans control all aspects of Texas state government. Checks and balances be damned, we don't have those here. The Texas GOP is in the unique position of being able to implement whatever bills they want with little to no pushback. Dems and activists, for their part, can find ways to get creative with the existing laws and regulations that are in place, but litigation can only get you so far when the judges in the highest courts in the state are part of the system you're fighting against.
Mail-in ballots in Texas are being rejected left and right, according to local officials, as new Republican-backed voter ID laws kick in ahead of primaries for crucial midterm elections. Election officials in 6 of the state's largest counties, home to about a third of Texas's population, are reporting unprecedented amounts of invalid ballots. That's left officials scrambling to try and get voters to fix their ballots ahead of the March 1 deadline.
Basically, 8,500 of the 28,000 mail ballots we've seen back, we've had to turn back and say, it's not going to work the way you've sent it to us.
That's largely due to a new requirement asking voters to include an ID number on their ballot envelopes, which are covered by a secret flap to protect voters' privacy. But officials say voters might be accidentally overlooking that crucial part of their ballots as a result.
I won't go into all the detail of the voter restriction efforts that have been passed in Texas in the recent years, but just to give you an idea, in 2021, Texas passed SB 1. SB 1 banned 24-hour voting and drive-through voting, measures that were implemented in 2020's mid-pandemic election in Harris County in an effort to provide Houstonians with safe and accessible polling options. By the way, the guy who put those protective measures in place, Chris Hollins, he is currently running for mayor of Houston. SB 1 also made it more difficult for voters to get assistance at the polls, and it empowered poll watchers. And our Attorney General is a joke of a person and an embarrassing Trumpster who filed a lawsuit to overturn the 2020 presidential election results, a law that actually placed him under investigation by the Texas State Bar Association. Beyond that, many voters have experienced difficulty or confusion trying to register to vote. The GOP idea being that it will just be easier for people to just not bother voting at all. We also got new and not improved voting machines. They're way more inefficient than the last ones, resulting in longer voting lines, and they're unnecessarily complicated, involving a touchscreen that makes you vote for one candidate per page. I think in the last primary that I voted in, there were maybe 89 races, give or take, on the ballot. So that's 89 separate pages that I had to scroll through. It took forever. Then it prints your votes on a piece of paper, and then you have to take that piece of paper and bring it over to another machine and feed it into that one like it's the 90s and we're trying to send a fax. Part of the missing ballots in Harris County is attributed to damaged ballots. Wouldn't have been a problem before with the old machines. There was also a shortage of election workers in Harris County and in other counties, with many people choosing not to volunteer due to the extraneous hassle imposed by the state.
Tens of thousands of voters were indeed rejected, voters who tried to cast a ballot and were not able to do so. One of the most interesting things that I'm seeing from this number is that we are seeing that there are thousands of people who actually corrected their ballot, who took an extra step to vote to try and overcome these hurdles. Cure rates, which is what it's called when you fix a problem with your ballot, they're usually really low in other states, but I'm seeing some significant numbers of voters who had to take an extra step but did take it to get their ballots counted. Still, though, tens of thousands of voters who weren't able to cast a vote in this last election.
At the end of 2021, Texas Monthly reported that, quote, nearly 12,000 registered voters have received letters demanding proof of citizenship as part of Texas's newest effort at voter list maintenance. And in the lead up to the March 2022 primary, our own Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick routed thousands of mail-in ballot requests to his office, requests that were supposed to go to local election offices. He cited lack of trust in election officials as his reason for doing so, because, the big lie. In a state that still uses runoff elections, missing or questionable ballots, like in Harris County and also outside of Harris County, they're critical in determining the primary election results. In the election last month, many of the races were close enough to where those thousands of ballots would have made a big difference. But as Texas celebrates its regressive successes in this arena and in others, for example, in the arena of abortion rights, we already see other states starting to emulate Texas's tactics. Idaho recently passed a Texas-esque abortion ban, and other states are expected to follow suit. Missouri actually went even further than Texas did in this regard, essentially equating women seeking abortions to fugitives. So yeah, this affects everyone, whether you live in Texas or not. And I promise you, if you are not paying attention to what's going on here, the GOP leaders in your state are.